Welcome to the Great Distraction.
Hello again, everyone. This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is universal basic income. My name is Ben, and with me today are my co-hosts, Thomas.
Hello.
Glenn.
Howdy.
And sitting in for Joe today is Rick.
Hello.
If this is your first time listening, welcome. We thank you for joining us. The Great Distraction is a podcast that focuses on a vast and random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, something to ponder. Universal basic income. This is a topic that seems to be getting a lot of attention in the media today. There is even a few presidential candidates that are trying to use that as their primary focus. For those of you that haven't heard of it yet, we'll give you a rundown real quick and introduce you to this topic. And we're hoping to cover some positives and negatives that we could think of on our own. And let me just start by saying, and I was talking to these guys before we started recording, I am an old school Star Trek geek, and I openly and proudly admit this because I have, and reason I bring that up is because I have always had this secret desire that someday we as humanity could reach this point of this utopian existence wherein, specifically to universal basic income, we all work for the betterment of our own kind and without the materialistic drives or drives for monetary compensation. And some of the stuff that I liked, and I'm neither a huge proponent nor, and I don't think you'll find either of us have a hard standing on this topic as we continue through it. Some of the stuff I did like about the concept is that it kind of made me feel like it lended to that type of existence for humanity. Maybe as a stepping stone to it or on a way or a trial of it. It just kind of made me feel when I first heard about it that maybe that might lead us there. So let's get into what it is. Essentially what this is, in pretty much all the manners I have heard or read of it presented, is literally $1,000 to every person every month in America. I'll let that sink in for a second. So this is regardless of your situation, regardless of, as far as I understand it, regardless of whether or not you have a job. I don't even know if this is like 18 plus or everyone, period.
I believe it was 18. Everything I saw was 18 plus.
So the reason you did see something about age. So we'll redefine that there. 18 plus $1,000.
Legal adult.
Legal adult. There you go. Now, before you think, oh, that's nuts. Really quick, let me throw out there, this isn't a new idea. As far as I understand it, from what I found, Alaska has been doing this since '83. And they give their citizens of all ages, this is not an 18-year-old, this is every single person there, gets an annual a stipend, or I don't know what you want to call it. They give them money every year per person. And it ranges from, it's based on how much their massive oil reserves are worth. That's what they base it off of. So if the state's doing good, everybody gets a little bit more. If the state's doing bad, they get less.
Yeah, but isn't that mostly just a payout from the oil companies to allow, or so the residents allow them to drill?
I didn't look at
it. It does have a little bit to do with that, and I've got a couple friends who own some property in Alaska. They don't benefit from this, but a lot of it was initially to try to get more, to try to grow the population of Alaska.
Yeah,
because it's such a harsh environment, and it's not really for everybody. So they initially started doing this to try to get more a population growth because they need people. I mean, you can't grow without people. So that was one of the things that was initially put into the system to try to get people to move up there.
Yeah,
and what I read, it was all funded by oil royalties. So there was a source there for the money.
Which, if you think about that also goes into Saudi Arabia. They do a lot of that too. Citizens in Saudi Arabia all get a little bit of And basically, what I don't know the whole scope of it, but a lot of people in Saudi Arabia work for the state. A massive amount of the population works for the state, so they all get paid a check, basically, regardless of their output in their job. It's all state funded, but a large percentage of Saudi Arabia's population is employed by the state, and the money is given kind of how Alaska does off of oil royalties.
I did not know that.
How much of that, though, are those recipients connected to the royal families?
Well, I mean, it's all natural-born citizens of Saudi Arabia.
Get a oil stipend?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it the same in Dubai as well? Because
A little bit. The Arab entity,
United Arab Emirates.
Emirates, that's what I was trying to say. A lot of those have some weird ties into paying their citizens off of the money from oil reserves.
Interesting.
And I think that was started in like God, I can't remember now. I want to say it was 50s or something like that, because there was a lot of like weird exchanges between the U.S. and OPEC and Shell Oil that kind of merged into the oil of Saudi Arabia in the 50s, post World War II.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't look at anything outside the U.S. for this at all. So that's I wasn't aware that was the situation there. San Francisco is considering this. They are looking into it. They haven't announced anything official or what they're intending to do with that information that they gathered. And Stockton, California, which is right next door to Sacramento, is, I believe, from what I understand, is starting this month, September of 2018.
August.
Or August, started in August of 2018, sorry, doing $500 a month, and they're going to run that program for 12 to 18 months. Though I did read that, and I don't know if you read the same, Rick, that it was only going to low-income families.
I heard 100 residents.
Oh, wow. So even smaller sample amount.
A small test subject, yeah.
Yeah, so and we'll get into some more of that later, but there's a lot of people who are very against the test concept entirely because of a selected demographic. Not everybody, because the idea behind universal basic income is that everybody, regardless of demographic, is getting this stipend, this amount of money. So I don't know how that plays 100. That's not even that many people, let's considering, especially how big Stockton is. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't read that part. Now, real quick, why is this being considered? There are a lot of reasons, and we'll get into it as we go over the pros side of it. However, one of the biggest media proponents of why that has been fed out to the media a lot is actually coming from Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. And we know those names. And Elon Musk in particular is calling this, or other people, the media is calling this based on what he has said as possibly the answer to automation. The large fear is that as geniuses like Elon Musk continue to refine their production and manufacturing processes to include more and more super, super advanced robotics, if you haven't and you're interested, I really encourage you to go to YouTube and check out Tesla interviews with Elon Musk and check out this factory. It is insane, the amount of automation that this man has. And you would think, okay, somebody so high up, how much has he actually, been involved in creating this kind of stuff? He walks through that factory and he knows things somebody as high as him should not need to know.
He's kind of a Henry Ford of the 21st century.
He is a super micromanager. He knows everything that's going on. The man is amazing. He's one of the few people I've ever would call my idol in my life. You can probably count on one hand how many people.
And he's a tinkerer, so he invented a lot of these processes himself. So he's very involved in it.
Yeah. So as he continues to automate this, he has said in the public. Now, I don't know how much of what I saw. A lot of times you read articles and people will take somebody's quote and kind of reinterpret it or even misinterpret. Yeah, they'll reinterpret it to sound like it's proving their point that they're trying to make. So I haven't seen him talk a lot about. I haven't gone looking for it either, but I haven't seen him talk a lot about this universal basic income. And in fact, one of the interviews I just watched with him, like a couple of days ago, he was talking about wherein every time they come up with a new process to do that they automate, there seems to be a new level of complexity that only a human being can do. So Now, the end result may be that with this automated process, you eliminate 10 people working in this line, but you still need one person to make sure that the process went through or to do this one step that automated process cannot do. So you didn't eliminate all 10 jobs, but you reduced by 90%, right? And that is where the concept comes from that, yes, we'll still need humans, but we will need far less of them. Now we're losing jobs. And that breeds the question then that brings up the larger question that, well, what is going to be this cure to an automated world if all of our manufacturing becomes automated as we get more and more advanced robotics and machinery? So he has been quoted talking about or mentioning that this is a possibility for dealing with that because these people will be out of jobs, and then what will we do, right? I haven't seen anything on what Zuckerberg said. Did you, Rick? Did you run across anything?
Nothing specific.
Yeah.
Just that he and Richard Branson also were in favor of it, but not like what they proposed.
Yeah, and I had thought I glanced something about one of the higher ups at Facebook was a partial grant funder for the money for Stockton. We don't know how much. We heard it was I read it was pretty close to the entire amount for that test that they're doing in Stockton, California. But yeah, that's about all I found of what Zuckerberg may have done or said, despite his name being mentioned in pretty much every article I found that also mentioned Elon Musk. So again, another example of, I don't know, how much is this individual actually involved in this, or did he make one comment and the whole industry has been spiraling off of that one, comment?
He said it and everyone tweeted it.
That's it, yeah, and then misinterpreted it and then retweeted it, and then it became a whole thing, right? So the obvious question with something like this that I'm sure most people, or at least the first thing I went to, and I imagine most would at least come to at some point, is how the heck do you pay for something like this? Where does the money come from? And right off the bat, I'll say we're not a political podcast, nor do we want to embed ourselves in that garbage. I think pretty much most of us don't. We have interest in it, but I don't think, we want to take it down that route, right? So I'm not when I go over this real quick, and whatever you guys have heard too. We're not going to go through the left, right, this, that, or the other sides of this battle, because it is going to come down to that. I mean, obviously, all of this stuff is political. It's all going to break down to politics and who supports what, and what side supports what. So I'll try and avoid that kind of stuff. But if you want to look into what the liberals versus the Democrats versus the Republicans are doing, yeah, you have to go on that on your own. Most of what I read for how they intend to pay for this stuff is through redirecting existing funds. Most of the people I had read who were either a presidential candidate or some other person trying to lay this out to prove its feasibility, tried to avoid taxes or increased in taxes or whatever, because you try and sell that to the people, and obviously, I mean, yeah, which of you wants to be taxed more? Okay, yeah, me neither. Especially not to pay money to everyone, even though you'd have to look at that kind of oddly. So you have to look at that kind of differently. So if they were going to increase taxes for you, let's say your increased taxes annually ended up being an additional $1,000 a year. Okay, that sounds like a lot. So okay, well, divided by 12, you can figure out the monthly amount for that. But then at the same time, they're going to give you, because you are part of the universal basic income, an additional $12,000 a year in this money. So now, obviously, how do you take $1,000 in taxes and turn it into $12,000?
There's not a lot of very good math.
Yeah, exactly. There's some tricky math there.
There's not a lot of good math in Congress in general.
Well, so now the first thing I will say is that all the ways I read about to fund this is broken into multiple sources. It's not just one.
Yeah.
Like
it would have to be.
Like I showed a perfect example, right? You're not going to tax the people $1,000 a year and then give them back $12,000 a year. Right. That's not going to work, obviously. But imagine that if one of the funding sources was a tax, I just wanted to put this in everyone's head, and it was X number of dollars, but you were being given back more than that.
It doesn't make sense to even have the tax.
That's correct, that too. But okay, I just wanted to put that in your head, and
just saying it. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we saw that during the Bush administration when they had the tax incentives there, where what was he cutting the checks? What was that?
Was it like $500 or something, or?
Yeah, like the economic stimulus package, where you paid your taxes and then you got a lot more back than you were expecting. But yeah, from everything that I found, that failed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see here. I wanted to cite one of the lead proponents of this, seeming to me in the media, is a gentleman. I don't know much about his background, but I do know that he is announcing himself as a presidential candidate. Now, we've all been through this before. I mean, somebody announcing themselves as a presidential candidate doesn't really mean much. Unless you're one of the lead runners, it's basically worthless. I mean, I imagine they find some ways to make money off of it, through funding. I mean, I'm sure it's got to be a lucrative business to go through this, especially if you can get a good amount of followers. But nevertheless, this guy's name is being thrown out into the media and in a million articles right now revolving around this topic because he is a leading proponent and has announced himself for running for presidency. And this is Andrew Yang. And I mean, you just Google that name and you'll see it is his leading.
That's his main stance.
His main agenda stance or whatever. Yeah. So he's all over this stuff, right? He broke it down into a few, I think 4 methods of paying for this, and I just want to go over this real quick so that at least we can leave you guys with an idea of that there is some logical way to pay for this without taxing the hell out of all of us. And the first thing is basically what I had alluded to already is current spending. On his website, he says that we spend an average anywhere between 500 and 600 billion a year on programs like welfare, food stamps, disability, stuff like that. And if universal basic income had UBI, henceforth known as UBI, I don't like to say, I'm tired of saying that word, those words. Henceforth, we call UBI. If UBI was instituted, some of those programs, if not all those programs, would go away. Why do we need to give people food stamps if we're giving them $1,000 a month? There's you wouldn't need both of them. Disability, I don't know. There's that one, whatever. That could have some variances, whatever. Welfare, same thing with food stamps or whatnot. So if you reallocated those funds to being divided up into all people and spread out, there's some money, right? New revenue. There is a concept. Another point he makes is there is a concept that if you give all of these people money, everybody money, and you are not doing it by printing out, thus increasing the deficit and increasing our debt and everything. You're not just printing money and giving it out to people. If you do generate money through money which is already there means, then people will, with said money, spend it. I mean, we're Americans. We don't save anything. So they will just put it right back into the economy. And the Roosevelt Institute is the main institute who has done, I think, the largest study on UBI, projected that the economy would grow approximately $2.5 trillion by instituting UBI and create 4.6 million new jobs. Now, how does giving everyone $1,000 a month increase jobs? Well, the concept behind that, or part of the concept behind it, I don't know that it's all of it, is when you increase demand, you must increase supply. And when you increase supply, you must increase demand, blah, blah, blah. They're proportionally related. So if people have money to spend, they're consuming more. They're buying more stuff. As the need for more stuff rises, thus the need to produce more stuff rises. And as the need to produce more stuff arises, the need to hire people to create said stuff rises as well. So as we're buying more crap that we don't need, but that's what we do, companies need to make more crap for us to buy and therefore need to hire more people to make said crap. That's kind of the logic behind it. Is that the whole picture? I don't know. But that's one of the methods that I understood it as. I was like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, if Thomas is making a widget over here and all of a sudden the people have more money, they're buying more of his widgets, Thomas got to hire more people to make more widgets. I mean, okay, so that kind of
Unless Thomas just writes a single program and sells that.
Yeah, what if I automate it?
Over again.
Or, there you go. Way to go full circle. I like it, sir. What if Thomas buys robot to automate process?
And then I'm going to need more UBI.
Yeah. Okay, that's a great point. That's a great point. So yeah, what if instead of creating new jobs, they automate those jobs? And yeah, I think this may be geared more towards smaller business, because small business isn't going to automate anything. The local pizza shop isn't going to buy a $5 million machine.
Pizza maker.
Pizza maker, right? Or whatever, a $100,000 pizza maker. He needs, said high school kid that'll work for minimum wage flipping the pizza. I mean, so it creates a job, right?
Yeah.
Or there needs to be, when more people have more money, more people are eating out, we need more restaurants. Now we need more restaurant workers or whatever. I'm sorry. Anybody else? You had a comment on that one?
No.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't want to cut you guys off. Another point that he made, and this one's a little bit, maybe a little bit of a stretch. He says we currently spend over $1 trillion on healthcare, incarceration, homelessness services, and things along that nature. Okay, everyone's got $1,000 a month. No one should be homeless. Now, if you are mentally ill, that's a different story.
Yeah, but $1,000 a month, if you live in California,
that's not even a monthly. That's not even rent.
But if you're homeless and you live in California and you have $1,000 a month, you can move to a place where $1,000 a month will get you a place to live. That's the point.
If you want to.
Yeah, well.
So we're not. Yeah, and I think nothing I read about this is saying giving people, hey, we're not trying to make your dreams come true here. Right? They're not trying to make your dreams come true. They're trying to give you a means to live. And as we go into the pros, we'll talk more about taking care of your basic needs with this $1,000. Now you are free to do other things with your time, and we'll get more into that in a minute.
Yeah, I read that argument a lot too.
Well, that's like basically the main proponent argument.
But remember, $12,000 a year is basically poverty.
True,
it's below poverty, as I understand.
Absolutely, but there's a difference between poverty as money to start. And then every dollar you make above that pushes you above that. $1,000 a month, you can get an apartment in many places in this country. You can get food to eat, especially for one person, because this is per each person. So you got a boyfriend or girlfriend. Now you have $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month is enough to live on.
8 or 10 hippies living together, and all of a sudden, cash is flush.
Yeah, if the four of us here put our $4,000 a month together, we could get ourselves a $2,000 a month house to rent.
True.
And buy a car, or maybe 2 cars that we could share between, and feed ourselves. We're not going to have anything nice, but guess what? Now we're
surviving.
Yeah. Now the four of us can sit around thinking about something to do and put together a podcast. So
is that how this started?
Is that how this got started?
I don't know. Did you guys get your checks?
I'm ready to automate this crap.
Nice, dude. Can Siri do this for us?
And one of the points that Mr. Yang made was that this isn't going to remove a lot of people from the welfare system. They'll have the option to take the $12,000 a year if that gets them out of that. But if they want to stay on, they can elect to be exempt from the UBI and stay on welfare.
Yes, that's what I.
Why would you present that option?
They would probably make more money on welfare,
right,
and be able to survive better that way than take the UBI.
Okay,
so they're not double dipping, is why he would present that option.
Yeah.
Okay. But if we're trying to reallocate,
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, if we try and reallocate funds, then why would we even leave welfare in existence?
Right. I think his point with the reallocation was you would have a surplus of funds in the welfare budget, and you could reallocate that money for the UBI. And since the UBI is intended
instead of eliminating the welfare,
correct? Because some people wouldn't be able to afford to live on the $12,000 a year. They'd get a pay cut essentially by getting off of welfare and taking just the UBI.
The other thing to consider too. Let me before I forget here, because I wanted to bring this point back. Going back to the Alaska deal, I wanted to say on average it was $1,000 to $2,000 a year per person, and that's all ages. So if you've got a wife and 2 kids, then that's 4 people. That's $4,000 to $8,000 a year they're getting for their site. So less than what we're talking about, but. Okay,
substantially less.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back and say that. So, but now who commented on that? Who lives by themselves? I mean, you would. So this is 18 or older, I guess. I forgot about that. So if you got at least another adult with you, I suppose there are a lot of people in poverty that live with just the one parent and then kids, and the kids wouldn't be getting the $1,000. So.
Correct. And I think that's one of the problems that they say they have with welfare is that it encourages
to have more kids.
Not just necessarily to have more kids, but that the male figure not live in the household.
Oh wow!
Because it'll reduce their welfare benefits.
Yeah. Oh wow!
Yeah. So they're saying that's one of the issues that they're creating with welfare is culturally it's pushing the men out of the home.
Wow, yeah. I had not thought of that before. That's
and also
really
with
terrible.
Yang's point, it was 18 to 64. So I believe after 64, you're getting Social Security. So you would be exempt from it as well, which would reduce the needed budget for the UBI.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good points. Those are both good points to make too. The last point that Yang makes as a possible, and one of the parts to fund it is probably going to be the least favorable, and that is a VAT. And that is, for those that don't know, I had to look it up too because America doesn't have VAT. Most of Europe does, and well, actually, out of 193 countries in the world, 166 of them have VATs. Now, before I define this, for those that don't know, they also may not have a lot of the same taxes that we have. They may not have property taxes. They may not have sales tax. They may not have income tax, or they may have one, the other, and whatever. So while this sounds like a great option or something to consider, we already have quite a few taxes, and it's kind of like, I don't know how much anybody would want to deal with this. So a VAT is a value-added tax, and it is a tax on the production of goods or services that a business produces. It makes it, so says Yang, it makes it much harder for large corporations who are experts at hiding profits and income to avoid paying their fair share. And he says it is nothing new. And in Europe, the average VAT is 20%. Now, when I first read about this, I just read about it earlier today because I did not know what a VAT was. I had heard people talking about it before when I had bought stuff internationally or whatever, but we never dealt with it, so I never looked any further into it. Right off the bat, that sounded to me like, oh, so you're going to take a tax of corporations, 20%, 10%, or whatever, on everything that they produce and sell. That kind of sounds like a sales tax, so it's another tax on major corporations for what they sell. Fine, I'm okay with that. We got so many major multi-billion-dollar corporations that aren't paying any damn taxes, and it's like they're excellent, just like he says, at evading taxes. They can hire high-priced attorneys that can find every loophole under the sun, and you and I can't do that. So they tax them an additional 10%, whatever. I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. Of course, they'll probably pass the buck on to us by increasing prices, but nevertheless, okay, on the paper, right off the bat, sounds like okay. Unfortunately, though, the VAT does seem to affect the consumer as well. It almost sounds like a double taxation. They're taxing the the companies on the products that they sell, and and I read too the stuff that they buy, the materials they buy to produce said widget that they're selling us, and then they're taxing us as well on buying it. But the argument is this: it is a consumption-based tax. Sorry, you don't want to pay it, don't buy shit. Plain and simple. Unlike an income tax. An income tax is you make money, give us some, or like a gas tax or whatever. Well, you want to drive a car? You can buy an electric. Want to drive a car? You're going to pay money for that gas. You want to drive your scooter? You're going to pay tax on that gas, right? These are much more mandatory taxes. I guess you could not have a job and not pay income tax. Sure.
And you get welfare.
And then you get welfare or whatever. Yeah, so bounce that back and forth, right? But so the only nice part I don't want to say nice part, the only alleviating part of that, I guess, if that's the correct word, is that you won't pay this tax if you don't flat out buy crap, So I like that aspect because it might make Americans think less about being consumers, and
no way.
They'll just come up with more money. They'll just use their $1,000 to cover the month to cover their VAT on all the stuff they buy.
So who's paying the value-added tax? Is it
That's what I'm saying.
the producer, and they pass it on to the consumer?
Essentially.
Because the consumer's paying the sales tax.
Right.
That's
and VAT
7%.
on top of this is what we're saying.
So you would essentially have a 28% sales tax.
Pretty much.
Well, not 20. He's suggesting 10% VAT for America. So yeah, if you have an 8% sales tax and a 10% VAT, now all of a sudden you're paying 18% on everything you buy. Wow.
That's huge.
That's huge.
And you're also paying income tax. You're paying
Exactly. We're already taxed too much.
We are paying way more taxes than people realize on everything.
So that's why I would save that one for the last, because of all the ideas I read, and there are some proponents of UBI that have put together, I don't know if as thorough as Mr. Andrew Yang here, their own methodology or ideal or format or for how we would fund this that didn't include a VAT. But and you and I, the four of us can sit here and come up with things. Legalize marijuana all over the place and tax it. Come on, right.
Personally, I think we just need to rework our entire tax code.
The entire thing.
And,
that would be so
eliminate all the loopholes, especially for major corporations. You got so many people like Amazon.
What Glenn said earlier, and you guys, we weren't recording at the time, but it's something I've always been a proponent of too. Two things. First thing, the one that Glenn said was, give us a flat tax, man. Forget all this crap. Everybody gets taxed 10%. We're done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no write-offs. We pay a tax and leave us alone. That would be the best way. The other thing is tax the damn churches. These companies make so much money and they don't pay anything on it. There's billions of dollars there.
Yeah, I'm all about taxing churches because most of them are basically just private enterprises.
They are. Every single one of them
Every
is.
single one of them. But I also, too, I think the redistribution of funds, I don't like that phrasing because I think it tells people that if you're successful and somebody isn't, and I think that's the way people perceive it, that it doesn't matter. You need to pay for somebody else. I think that's the terminology that gets translated.
Oh, you're thinking of like the Robin Hood types, steal from the rich.
Yeah,
and
sort of
poor.
like that.
But the redistribution of resources is not necessarily from corporations. It's from like, let's cancel out welfare, stop putting money into that, and then move it over to this, right?
Yeah,
So I mean,
but my argument is, as far as the UBI is concerned, I'm not really a fan of it in general. And the one thing that I'll say is we have so many other problems. Like, we have all these tax deficits, these huge issues where we have major corporations that are just skimming the boat and just not paying taxes. We got churches, all these different organizations. And then we got people in Congress and the Senate that are stealing money, giving contracts to their cousin who starts up a solar company that never does anything, billions of dollars. So there's billions of dollars getting thrown away and wasted. If we're trying to help our country not be so poor, maybe we should stop all the absolute thievery that's going on in our own system first, and then start from there.
that would definitely solve the problem without this roundabout,
I feel like it's just a Band-Aid, and I think the UBI thing is going to be another thing, especially the Democrats will use, because Democrats use poor people to get votes.
Yeah.
So it's going to be another thing where they're going to say, oh, well, if you vote for me, I'm going to give you a UBI, and everybody's going to get $12,000 a year. You just got to vote for me.
And they're going to try it. They're going to try it. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because we're only, a
year?
We're like a year and 3 months or something away from the next election. And the next Democrat, or I don't know, maybe the Republican candidates might find us too. We don't know. But this will be an issue and it will come up. So I want to use your lead into what I wanted to go into next was the cons first of the obvious problems with this. But before I do that, there is another name for a VAT that I wanted to throw out there too. That so just so that everyone's aware of another nomenclature they may use to sell us the same idea, and that is GST, and that is a goods and services tax. So VAT and GST are essentially the same thing. It's just they're consumption taxes. And however you feel about that, whatever. But all I can say is, can you imagine if we had to pay an additional 10% on a new car?
Throw a carbon tax on top of that.
Oh, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously.
And then California will have some sort of emissions tax on top of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for those that don't live in California, we have some interesting taxes. Now, most of them aren't that much, but like if you buy, say, a monitor or a TV or something, there is a recycling fee that gets thrown on there. Now, you buy a $2,000 TV and it's like, I don't know, $7 or something. But nevertheless, there are... Yeah, our cell phones we have special taxes for. I don't even know what the hell they
And
are.
our gas tax is unbelievable.
Our gas tax and going up. We just got an increase.
Yeah, I think at this point we're paying somewhere between 50 and 60 cents per gallon in
something
taxes.
crazy like that. Yeah, and what's ridiculous is a lot of the oil funnels through us right to get to the coast to be shipped off. So it's like, how is this? This is the end point here.
That's back to my original argument. I think that if we want to try to solve some problems, especially poverty, maybe we should stop the thievery that's going on between everybody.
I agree, but I mean, I wanted to talk about this one specific and this angle of band-aiding the issue, and you're right. So again, let's lend that into the obvious problems with this solution, the Band-Aid problem. I mean, right off the bat, you're not. We've already had plenty of examples via presidencies where we have tried to alleviate problems by throwing money at them, and most of the time it doesn't work or it doesn't help. But sometimes I feel like if the money is actually used the way it's supposed to be, which is there's the problem.
Yeah,
right?
that's back to the argument. Yeah.
It's never used the way it's supposed to be. So, okay. So another big problem that obviously came up to my mind first is anything that involves raising taxes. Nobody wants more taxes.
Hell no, especially in California.
And unless, like I started off by saying, unless there's some way that, along with the other points that, like, for example, Yang was making, we can get the money together that way, and then we increase the tax, but the amount of money we get back from UBI is higher than that tax, then maybe it can work, I guess. I don't know. I'd have to, again, Glenn says, Glenn's like Glenn was saying, those numbers are funny, dude. I don't know.
So one question that I had, what problem are they really trying to solve with this? Or is it just a social play to try to get votes or to spike interest.
So as I understand it, the concept is that automation is going to create an unemployment surge, right? As you get self-driving vehicles, you won't need truck drivers, you won't need taxi drivers and all these things, and we're going to have a spike in unemployment. So this is supposed to help supplement that. And our basic housing or our basic living costs. Like in California, we've been saying, it's hard to find a place to live for under $1,000 a month. So with that $1,000, you can't quit your job, but it'll make things easier to get by. In other parts of the country, you could get your rent paid with that $1,000 and whatnot. But like in San Francisco, I don't know anybody that can afford to live there, and I don't know how they're doing it.
It goes. I think it goes back to my argument the whole time is like, why don't it's just like the cost of living. Cost of living keeps going up, and then people argue and throw a fit when people want to raise the minimum wage. Well, those two kind of work together, and we're just getting poorer and poorer and poorer. So then comes a system like this where it's like, oh well, we can solve it with a UBI. Again, it's just another Band-Aid, and I think it's just going to be a political argument for some people to get votes. This isn't going to solve it. We have a much bigger problem. We have several much bigger problems that need to be addressed way before this. We have enough money. This is the richest country in the world. We have enough money to take care of people, everybody. But you walk outside the studio, and there's 4 people sitting out there living on the street, and most of them are...
we're not kidding either.
And most of them, we're absolutely not kidding. There's 2 of them right now. Yeah. And most of these people are mentally ill, or they're disabled, and so we can't even allocate funds to take care of people who are destitute, who are we don't take care of our own people. So just another Band-Aid is just another way to get votes, and at the end of the day, there's just going to be the same routine, the same scams going on every day. Somebody's going to make a ton of money off of this if it became actual policy.
Yeah, definitely. Those people who are sitting out there right now, that you give them $1,000 a month, there is no way they're going to better their situation.
Absolutely, they're mentally disabled. They need real help. And if we're gonna, everything that I read about this UBI was all about trying to bring up the poverty level, trying to get less people off the streets. We already have those options, and we're not doing them because people are stealing money and skimming money off the fund. Every time some organization comes up that says, oh, we're going to help homeless people, we're going to help disabled people, 2 years later you find out 3 of the CEOs embezzled $14 million off of it. Yeah. So unless we can solve those problems, I think this is just another one of those things. And I think it's going to be used in the next election to get votes. Mm-hmm. You're going to tell a bunch of poor people that we're going to help you out if you vote for us. Here's $12,000 a year. All you got to do is vote for me, and it's never going to happen. And this whole thing about robots taking everybody's jobs, that's as stupid as fucking, immigrants are taking all our jobs. Yeah. That's how dumb that sounds to me. Robots are going to take all our jobs. It's 2018. It's going to be a while before robots take everybody's job. And I think there's a lot more that we need to focus on before that's the scare. And it just becomes a scare tactic. And I think as this gets closer to the presidency or the presidential election, you're going to see a lot more people coming up with these stories about how everybody's going to be in trouble if we don't do that. Robots are going to take everybody's job, and every car is going to be self-driving. Dude, we're close to those areas, but we're not that close to those areas. We need a lot of other things to happen first.
Yeah.
This isn't the first time that streamlining efficiency in manufacturing has threatened jobs.
Oh, look at in London in like the 1780s or something like that. There was a huge
ever since Henry Ford.
Well, I mean, even before that, there was a story, and I wish I could remember it. It was a weird history thing. And I think it was like a 1780s or something like that. There was when. I can't remember what it was. I think it was bread making or something like that. There was some machine that came out, and all these people, like these bakers, threw a fit, and they were bashing machines. This was in London in like the 1700s. So anytime there's any sort of like advancement in technology that will take jobs away, there's always going to be people who freak out and throw a fit and smash the machines.
And when the railroad was being built, right? That was when they started automating the pin drivers or whatever, and the old sledgehammer guys.
Oh, yeah.
There's songs written on that, right? I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I thought too, but it's being pushed into the media by the heads of this automation, like Elon Musk. And how many jobs could you really automate?
Yeah. And if Elon Musk really wants to help out, why don't he throw a couple $1 trillion out of his pocket to some impoverished nations around here? I mean, come on. Yeah. He's in California. How many people are homeless in California? Hey, Elon Musk, if you're listening, how about you dip into that giant pocket of yours and help some people out in your own neighborhood?
Well, he's trying to help humanity out in different ways, but yeah, you're right. We could have a California UBI, and he could get
Oh, my
back to the
God.
state that he's
Him and
you know,
Zuckerberg. I
Yeah,
mean, between
oh,
those
man.
two guys, there should be no disabled person in America living on the street.
Yeah, there's a good point. Zuckerberg does nothing to help humanity, as far as I'm concerned. As far as Facebook is concerned, maybe he donates some of
yeah.
his money and does some charitable stuff or whatever. But I don't
He
see.
gets his photo taken.
Yeah, I don't see
photo
Facebook
ops.
as helping humanity. But
Right. I mean, that's the thing is I go back to when I think about these things, I think there's so many people who are skimming the system and robbing money by the trillions. If anybody really wanted to help out, there's so many disabled people. There's so many disabled people in this country that are living on the streets that cannot help themselves. If you really care about people, then be a little bit more helpful in that regard. You've got money falling out of your pocket.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Rick.
I don't think handing out money is the answer. I think
I
if
don't
we
think
were-
it is either.
Yeah, if we were to provide things that would help supplement their living expenses, like food, rides, housing, that would be more helpful than just giving someone.
I
money.
agree, and for me, the reason I go back to the homeless thing, and because we live in California, and every other person is homeless, and you look at the disabled people and mentally challenged people who are living on the street, you know, you could give them $1 bazillion, and they can't help themselves. We are a society that is trashing and stepping on each other just to be what
to live
$50 richer this week
Oh,
or
yeah,
something.
you just got to one up.
Yeah, we got to one up everybody. Why don't we, this whole ideology of this just makes me sick. And I think all these people that are yelling and screaming, we should do this, we should do that. And if they go home to their 7 mansions and their 3 yachts, well, why don't you help out the people who are here? I'm tired of hearing people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg talk about what everybody else should do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on the back on the subject of automation, jobs are invented or created in the future that we won't be able to even conceptualize
At
40
this point.
Yeah, 40 years ago, nobody knew about the internet or Facebook or anything like that.
Yeah,
Or
being
all
a
of the
programmer
jobs.
for a website, right? I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
I think we're
Yeah.
going to adapt.
Silicon
Yeah.
Valley is what it is now
Yeah.
because of what happened 30 years ago. That wasn't anything that anyone was able to anticipate, and we'll get more of that. And I think that will be what saves us from the unemployment deficit due to automation. And that's what has happened since the industrial era, in our country at least, and I'm sure throughout the world. Another point I wanted to hit on that you had made was the minimum wage point. In California, they raised the minimum wage from like $10 to $15 an hour.
Well, but that's going to go in increments over like a 4-year period.
Yeah, I think right now it's right at 11.
Right.
Yeah.
But before the law was passed, consumer area retail stores were already putting in automated cashiers.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, there were like 5 or 6 cashiers in the grocery store. Now there's 4 or 5 self-checkout lines and 1 cashier
Yep.
and then a helper. So before the law was even passed, they were already circumventing that and reducing jobs. So there were 10 people employed at one time, and they've reduced that down to 3 to cover that minimum wage increase that hadn't even passed yet.
Yeah, and I swear the only reason they're putting one person in line there is because in California it's illegal to go through self-checkout with alcohol. So somebody has to be
Oh, yeah,
leaving a
right.
register lane open. But go ahead.
And like you were saying too, things happen that you can't have entire automation. You do need a human to solve weird
Yeah.
problems that a computer can't predict.
Yeah. So when you had gone off on the your first point there about automation, I was totally going to go along the same lines, but I wanted to add one other thing to that. There will always be, as far as I can tell, until we have figured out true AI and it can really think for itself and it is a sentient being. And I want to emphasize that AI is not anywhere near what we have out there. It is not a collection of algorithms. It is a sentient being. And we are, as far as I know, way, way far away from that. So until it becomes that, there will always be a need for human interface into all of these things that we build. In that last interview I saw recently with Elon Musk at Tesla, he mentioned himself, countless these machines break down all the time. We always have to be out here and repairing them. So teams of people had to be hired who are educated and trained to repair these things. Now, if you're generally afraid of the apocalyptic coming of the robots and the automation of all of these jobs and they took our jobs and all that stuff, then one up yourself. Get out there, learn something, expand, grow, and become a valuable asset for the next generation of what jobs human beings are going to do. Learn to work on robots. Learn to program. Learn to whatever. You got to figure something else out, because what may end up happening at some point is that a lot of our rudimentary, uneducated jobs will go away. Human beings are supposed to be advancing. All of us are supposed to be becoming more intelligent, more educated. focus on that and you'll be fine.
But instead, you have a culture that, like, I grew up in the Midwest where a lot of people worked for the automotive industry. And when a lot of that stuff started becoming automated, and it goes back into like even in the 80s where small automation was coming into play. You got all these unions and all these people, and most of the auto workers that I knew, and if you're an auto worker, don't take this the wrong way. I grew up with a stepdad who was, and he had an 8th grade education.
Yep, my father was in auto sales.
So when my stepdad got laid off of work for 4 years from Chrysler, his job options were 0.
Yep.
He knew how to do nothing. He could do basic math, and that was it. So all of a sudden, he went from making $27 an hour to being unqualified for anything, because a lot of these jobs were inflated in their ability. You can't pay somebody who has an 8th grade education $30 an hour and think that that's okay. Because what happens if one little thing happens, or the company shuts down for a month, or something like his situation? He got laid off for 4 years in the 80s. All of a sudden, he was making 0 cash, was unqualified for anything. We can't keep yelling at things like, "Oh, automation is taking our job." It's as dumb as the argument I was saying earlier about, "Oh, immigrants are taking our jobs." Learn how to do something.
Yeah.
When I was a kid,
Have a backup plan.
When I was a kid, my dad and my grandfather are both engineers, and they consistently told me how to learn how to do as many things as I possibly can, because learning one thing is not enough.
No.
You can't put all your eggs in one basket. You have to learn how to do multiple things. I know how to do all kinds of weird stuff that I can go get a job right now. It may not be the job I want, but it'll be a job that feeds me and gives me a place to live. And most people are not willing to put that kind of energy into their own being, so they
No.
look at all these systems like, "Oh, what's this politician going to give me for free?"
Yep.
I think that's another part of the bigger problem.
Yep.
And if you're afraid of automation, talking, if you're afraid of this, then you really need to step up and try, just like you were saying, Ben. I think more people should invest in themselves and learn how to do something. We have a culture of people who just want to sit around and do nothing.
Oh, we also
And
have
so
this popular idea of a lack of self-accountability. There's no responsibility in our culture right now. It's a fading commodity.
Yeah.
And the other thing I ran into a lot too in school, and I know it's still pumping them out like this, is the sense of entitlement that comes out when you get your college degree.
Absolutely.
You think that there's some job that's you deserve to have or something. And
Oh, dude, I met so many people who were graduating college and they were like, "Oh, I'm going to have a $60,000 a year job." And I was like, "Where at? Let me apply."
Why do you think that is? You got good grades? That really doesn't mean as much as you think
right.
it does. Or what is it
I
about
graduated
that?
from Sac State. I'm going to get $80,000 a year when I walk out of here.
Yeah.
Doing what?
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot to swallow there, buddy. Okay, we covered a lot of the negatives. I want to go over some of the positives, or some of the.
Actually, I found a negative that I thought was kind of interesting from, it was a quote from Elon Musk. He was saying that he was concerned for the individual's sense of purpose due to the human need to produce stuff, to work. Right, you get a sense of accomplishment from working and producing things.
Well, it's a sense of pride. It's a sense of self-worth.
Right.
When people work hard jobs and they pay for their bills, or I don't like paying bills, but when I work and I do a good job and I get paid and I pay my bills, I feel good. I'm like, yeah, I'm broke, but I was able to do this. I was able to take care of my needs or my family or whatever. When you remove that from a society, it's like Glenn was saying, we already have a problem with our own identity as people, and especially in America, we have this entitlement thing going on. You start giving people money and give things for free. I look at a lot of people that I know, and I grew up with a lot of people who are on welfare. I grew up in poor neighborhoods, and dude, it does not give anybody the incentive to do more because you have your basics covered.
No, but I want to go back to what you started off there with. You know how many people? I want to play off of that, the sense of accomplishment and that pride that comes with when you do that. Do you know how many start off in they come out of high school and they get a job because you're broke. You need a job. You got to go get a car. You got to drive. You got to have some fun.
You need stuff.
You need stuff, right? So you get into the restaurant business, or you get into anything, right? That is kind of just a dead end job and is always going to be right there. It's not like there's much room to move up. There's some potential, but for the most part,
dishwasher is always going to be a dishwasher.
That's whatever. So you get into any job where you don't produce anything. Okay. You don't get a sense of accomplishment. Let's say you stay in there for 5 years. Let's say you go into another job that's like that. Now you got 10 years, 15 years, maybe 20 years you've been doing this your whole life. jobs that don't accomplish anything. There are so many people who don't understand and have never accomplished anything at all in their life. That's all they've ever had was getting by money from dead-end jobs. So they don't seek that stuff because they've never had it.
Well, that starts, earlier than that, man.
Agreed.
Earning an allowance as a child, working for your money.
So you can call, yes, it's definitely a nurture thing, right? But
absolutely.
We have a huge amount of people in this country who are like that. So when they go home at the end of the day, they just get themselves by, right? They watch the stupid sports or the stupid news or the TV, the boob tube. They stare at the tube. That's what they've got. How do you instill in that the idea that you need to reinvent yourself, you need to re-educate yourself, you need to reform yourself, you need to build yourself up into something better, you need to accomplish something, you need to produce something?
I think the real answer to that situation is pretty ugly, and that is to back off. Do not hand out. Cut welfare. Let people get sick and hurt.
Oh, man.
Maybe
really, tough love could do it.
Seriously, survival of the fittest. It is what this world runs on.
I've never had an unemployment check. I've never had any social, securities, welfare. I've never had anything like that. I lived in my car when I was 16. I decided I didn't want to live in my car anymore because it was wintertime in Indiana. It was cold.
Yeah.
And so I worked even more at the job I had. And, I understand that a lot of people don't look at things this way, and a lot of people feel like they're, for lack of a better term, disenfranchised. But, it's everyone's choice to be something other than a couch potato or a lazy whatever.
A little less tough love than Glenn's approach. What I was going to suggest.
That was Glenn's point, was you don't give them the ability to be a couch potato. Let them fail, and that'll inspire them, hopefully, to succeed.
Or it'll turn them into criminals, and they'll start robbing liquor stores.
Well,
work is work, I guess.
I was just going to say...
At least they're doing something.
I was just going to say, get a damn hobby and start making something that you can be proud of,
but that's a personality. I think that's a personality trait, though, and I think that's... And for me,
that's unfortunate.
Even though I've said that, it is a personality trait, and it is because I grew up around people who were... Like, my grandfather was an amazing human being. He was a rocket engineer. The guy was just an awesome human being to deal with, and he was super inspiring. So I had that. A lot of people don't have that, and I get that. But you can't just retrain people to all think like we think, where you go, hey, get off your butt and do something. You can't do that.
Something for fun. And that's why I like using the hobby approach when I try and present a possible solution for changing one's thinking on this matter is do something for fun in the form of, say, a hobby, something that you actually produce something. And that teaches one, if they haven't already learned, the beauty that comes from an accomplishing something. That same person I'm talking. A lot of people don't have any hobbies, man. They come home. That's all. They work the dead end job. They go home. They watch the TV, and what do you accomplish? Nothing. Yeah. And that makes you feel like garbage because we are human beings, and all of us create, and all of us want to create.
But a bigger system has made that possible because we're all just cogs in a machine.
Yeah.
And so it's as long as Amazon is still making $2 billion every other day, then they don't care about other people. And that's another thing too. And we've been forced as a society and stripped of our identity because we've been turned into just pieces of a puzzle.
Yeah.
Well, and that breaks down to corporate farms. We're no longer responsible in general for producing our own food. We're not making our own tools anymore. We're
Okay, in an effort to put us back on the pause, I wanted to stay on the pros for this last part here or whatever. Let me present to you a concept that this kind of touches on a little bit, but it's something I've mulled over for many years myself. You think of all the great minds that have existed before us, and they have come. They were during times when most people were worried about farming their land or feeding their kids, and every day of their life was hard work in order to bring in the minimal amount of money that they could to survive. Kind of like what we're talking about now, but it's much easier to survive than it was back then, right? You take people like the Einsteins, the Teslas, some of these great minds that accomplished amazing things, and I've always questioned, wait a minute. When everyone else was busy kicking their butts, killing themselves to barely make ends meet and survive with their family and their kids and all this other stuff and whatever they were taking care of, you guys had time to sit in a lab and tinker around and play and invent stuff?
Well, they also had funding.
Okay, fine. They had funding. Somebody gave them an education. Somebody pulled them out of the life, gave them an opportunity to not worry about basic survival so that they could pursue other endeavors and possibly better themselves. It wouldn't have been possible had they been broke, poor people farming, working on the farm, and never able to get away from that. They wouldn't have invented anything. That concept has bugged the heck out of me because I wondered how many more geniuses we have in the world that have never been given the opportunity, never been given the motivation or the push forward, that we don't need to worry about that right now. Find something else to do with yourself. Many will turn into lazy blobs. I believe that too. But at the same time, think of what else. One of the pros I see to a system like this is it could potentially open up the avenue for people to study things that they can be truly passionate about. And that is one of the biggest proponents of UBI, is finding your passion. You major in history because you love history. You get out of school, nobody cares about your degree in history. Unless you got a PhD and you can write a book and get published, nobody cares about your degree in history. You major in psychology, great, you and everybody else, wonderful. You want to major in art because you want to be an artist, or you don't want to major in anything, you want to be an artist. Thomas, I'm sure you could speak to this, but just like going back to the 16-year-old that you were once long ago. Imagine if you had the opportunity to not worry about sleeping in your car and not worry about feeding yourself, and you still pursued your dream to become an artist. Now you have the freedom afforded to you that some of the greats in our human existence had afforded to them, and were able to bloom, blossom, and grow into something that otherwise they never would have been able to.
Because your basic needs were provided to you.
That's the pro.
However, in those examples, we did not have, as a society, digital media being streamed in our face. We didn't have TV. We didn't have radio. You had to, if you had the time away from providing for your basic needs, you had to sit and think.
That's true.
You were alone with your thoughts and had to devise something. Which creates
and that's exactly what that's why I mentioned. That's why I mentioned. I think a lot of people would just become couch potatoes and do nothing with it. But at the same time, I mean, well, not all humans are equal. Not all animals are equal.
But I think your angle is even if a small amount of people who wanted to accomplish more, who couldn't because they were financially unable to, even if that small amount of people were, could that be a betterment of human society because somebody like the next Thomas Edison would have that opportunity?
Or the next Thomas, the metal artist.
Yeah, and that's the argument that's going on right now in Finland, because Finland does a program similar to this where the equivalent is about, I think, $650 a month. And what their argument is that's exactly what they're saying is like, you have so many people who are strapped to get by that they don't have time to actually invest in themselves or to do anything else that might help society move forward. So giving them a small stipend or a UBI or whatever frees them up so they're not struggling so hard that they can focus on a bigger, project or idea or an education or whatever. I agree with that. I think that could be a very useful thing. I just think as the American culture is concerned, I don't see that happening.
There's
with
always
us.
going to be bloodsuckers. There's always going to be ground feeders. There's always going to be fishermen. There's always we're
But if 1% of the people who get a UBI turn it into something, maybe that could change. Maybe that could cure cancer.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, who knows what effect it could have? If we could. And then what about when people start pulling their funds together? To do stuff.
That's a good point too.
Like I said too. Like we would have $4,000 right here in this room. Now. Okay, so we're all stable enough and take care of ourselves or whatever, so we're not poverty level per se or whatever. But
kinda.
Well, but nevertheless, with an extra $4,000 a month, if we combined our efforts together, and people will do this kind of stuff. They do it in third world countries where they get nothing, and they'll take out loans among their little hut villages so that one person can buy an oven this year, and then the next year we buy this family an oven. And they do that kind of stuff. So I think it opens doors. I think it could potentially open doors for another thing that they had brought up too was the opportunity for people to play with investing, which grows companies, which teaches people, about investing and what they can do with their money. And no matter what, they're going to reinvest it in, hopefully, another American company. So it just gets fed back into the economy.
But I think, I agree with that to a small degree. But if we're talking $12,000 a year, that's below poverty level. So that's basically just covering your rent.
True, but a lot of people are still going to maintain a job because you're right. It's not enough to do much with in life, and that's the good part. Because if it were $50,000 a year, well, now you really have a whole bunch of people sitting around
vacation.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be out of the country right now, collecting my paycheck from the country.
Right.
Or if you had a family with 2 children and the parents could cover the basic needs, but they were worried about sending their kids to college. They could pocket that $12,000 a year, and by the time the kids are at college age, they may have $100,000
It's true.
that they can get an education with that maybe the parents before them didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Kind of alluding to what you were getting at there.
And I do agree with, if you say you got 2 or 3 people, or you got a husband and wife or something, and they're both getting $1,000. Now they got $2,000. And even in California, if you got $2,000 among a couple people that are living together, that kind of makes it so you don't have to worry about rent so much. And one of the biggest expenses you have in states like California and New York, places like this, is rent. I mean, that strips a lot of people. It used to be a rule of thumb that
eats you alive.
It eats you alive here. It used to be a rule of thumb that, like my grandparents, if you paid more than 25% of your income in rent, you needed to go find somewhere else to live. To survive in California, most people are paying 60 and 70% of their income.
Yeah.
So I agree that would help a lot in that regard. And if people were teamed together, I see a lot of good points to it. My problem is I see people for what I feel like they are,
And I agree.
which
There's
are
a lot of them are
which
gonna
are
be-
dirty.
They're
Horrible
animals. They're
example.
animals.
They're just animals.
Yeah.
And so I don't think this is going to help people who don't want help. But I do agree that there is a positive side to it. And I hope that if something like this is implemented, that there will be people who will take advantage of this to better themselves. That's what the point of this is.
There was something else too. I don't know if I have this fact right, because I'm going off of what we learned when we were in elementary school. Wasn't Roosevelt's New Deal the one that printed out during the Great Depression $20 bills that were basically worthless because the whole economy had gone to crap, but gave people cash just to have in their pocket so that they felt like they had something? I can't remember. I could have sworn.
That was the George Bush thing that I was talking about, 2008.
I thought there was something that was
I'm
raw.
messing with you. I'm sorry, I'm being a dick. I don't remember what the
I
New
think
Deal
I think there was.
but it was
I think there
essentially the
was.
same idea.
Yeah, so I
It was
mean,
a
it's
stimulus
essentially the
package.
same idea. There may be a certain amount of there are a lot of people who are struggling week to week with their paychecks, month to
Absolutely.
month with their
I'm
their
one of
whatever.
them.
Yeah, so and now all of a sudden you got $1,000 in your bank every month. Not only do you feel better as a person and more secure and less stressed with less of a burden, hopefully you're not going to go blow it on heroin or alcohol. I
Yeah.
mean, assuming most people are not,
Get my fix.
assuming most people aren't chasing a dragon of some sort, what can you now do with your life, and how much better will you feel, and therefore maybe invest in yourself more, take care of yourself better? I mean, I don't know.
Well,
Maybe-
it would change a lot of things for the average person. I mean, if average person I keep bringing up Amazon because I really
Bezos.
despise them. But somebody who's working a regular job and they're making $24,000 a year, after taxes, that paycheck is like $300 a week. Yeah. So you're talking what, $1,200 a month is what you're making working 40 hours a week to survive. So you throw that person an extra $1,000.
Yep.
And it's doubling their
income.
And if they're not having to pay taxes on that, then that frees them up to use the money and not have to worry about it later. I think it could be a really good thing. The problem is we have so many other problems that I don't think that funding it is very. It's not a very, I don't know, for lack of a better term, I don't see how that's possible.
Yeah, it would be a tough one, that's for sure. It would definitely take a large reorganization of our.
But what I was trying to say before was the fact that with our income versus the rate of inflation and income not going up, this just seems like another way that the government can allow corporations to keep paying people less. If we were paying people decent livable wages for decent
that is
jobs,
an excellent point.
we wouldn't be in this situation already. I mean, look at Amazon. You make $13.50 an hour to work at Amazon? Seriously?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Make
multiple
billions of dollars.
and they just pocket billions of dollars.
That's a very valid point. Is it might be incentive for companies to pay people less. Glenn, what were you going to say? We're kind of
If this does go through, what is it going to do to the basic cost of living?
well, see now with raising the minimum wage, that the argument by all the companies were, dude, I charge $5 for a hamburger. If I have to pay my employee from $8 to $15 an hour, I got to charge $10 for the hamburger. I'm sorry, I got to
But
make
that's
the money
not
somewhere
true
else.
for people like McDonald's.
Okay, but that's the argument, right? So,
Right. So, yeah, okay.
Was that at least that's how I had heard it presented when I heard their argument, right?
Right. My thought was just that if I was making or producing a good and I knew that my customer base had suddenly more money to spend, even though they were already spending X amount of money on my product, wouldn't I increase the price to try to squeeze more money out
What if
because
you were
they have
selling more and therefore could reduce the price to sell even more? Because remember, what if you found that you reduced it a little bit? They have more money to spend, but you reduce the price a little bit more. Now your increase is up 40%, and now you're making more essentially because you dropped the price a little bit more. You're selling more.
Okay, I guess it would depend
You
on
can
the
play
product
with
and the
yes,
the market.
absolutely, and you can play with. I mean, they play with that kind of stuff all the time with profit margins, right? It's like how much if we reduce it, we sell more, we make more. If we raise it, it depends on what your product is, and if you're selling high end headphone amplifiers, well, there's so much margin in this. I only need to sell one a year, and I'm good, right? If I reduce the price, then I'm not going to sell anymore because not that many people are buying it. If you're selling hamburgers, whole different story. Yeah, okay, so we're kind of running out of time. I wanted to leave with a couple of quick notes, just things to consider as you consider and ponder this UBI circumstance, idea, situation, conundrum, however you want to word it. Things to consider where we're putting our money or where money has been allotted. There are crazier things out there than what we're talking about here in funding something like this. For example, Trump has committed $1.3 trillion to building a wall along Mexico. I mean, we're not going to talk about that. Just $1.3 trillion, people. It's a wall. Come on. You can't come up with money to get everybody $1,000 a month.
What about the space thing, the space military, to
that-
fight ISIS?
There you go.
Because ISIS is so successful that they already have a space program, I guess.
Yeah, okay. That kind of stuff. Another quick point to leave with. This has been working to a degree in Alaska for decades. I mean, this is not a completely dumb...
but they're an oil-rich place that has, they're just like Saudi Arabia, they have an amazing resource because of their natural resources to be able to pump that money
But we are a rich country.
We are a very rich company.
We are an extremely rich country. We just need to reallot the funds a little
That's
differently.
exactly it. And we need to collect taxes on people who make,
Yeah.
$1 billion every 2 days.
Agreed. And what if, the last thought I'll leave you with is, what if this was manipulated a bit in how it worked? What if there were requirements, for example, a clean drug test, otherwise you don't get your UBI, or you have
Discrimination.
you maintain a job, otherwise you don't get your UBI, or you are not incarcerated, or have a horrible criminal history. There could be criteria that make this increase the chances that this money goes to people who may do something better with the freedom in life that would be afforded to a person who doesn't have to worry about their basic survival, funding.
Make it a reward for a positive social credit score.
Oh boy!
Oh my God!
Yes.
Now you're opening
Nice
up the door.
That's it. That is a topic for a quickly coming day. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you found that interesting, and we hope you join us for the next one. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes, or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.